recently we did a video. I did a video about aptitude, ask, abilities, skills, and knowledge. And the question came in to Discord and just now about what to do to assess your ability for anything. How are you going to do your own assessment? And fundamentally, the question is about self assessment. And that is its own video. Do you have an aptitude for something? We talked about what aptitude means in the other video. I'm not going to talk about that other than to say aptitude is primarily, in my opinion, that you have a natural innate ability to do something. What we talked about abilities versus skills versus knowledge. I'm going to try really hard not to talk about that. But so how do you assess your abilities? How do you assess your aptitude? How do you assess your skills? How do you assess your knowledge? And in general, how do you assess anything? And there's going to be at least one or two people listening to this that are going to say, "Oh, well, obviously you need to like take a test or get certified or do something like that." And that's not wrong. I think that uh, the many ways of assessment out there. I mean, I'm really avoiding a huge rabbit hole here because, I mean, their entire books about assessment. Um, and there's huge debate about whether a multiple choice test is a true assessment of your skills. And so I'm just going to tell you what I think as usual, and then you can do your own thing. But I believe that it's largely like if I like imagining like a blacksmith, right? Where's the blacksmith, right? The blacksmith and the apprentice blacksmith. If you want to think of Jedi, fine. But how did that relationship work? And I think if we dig into that relationship, we'll kind of come to understand uh, what it is about assessment that actually works and it doesn't destroy your soul and thing. And let's first talk about the assessment that I think is the most valuable and the kind that you should do and get practice in your own learning practice. Um, and then we'll talk about all the other ones and what I think is wrong with those because it doesn't be negative, but whatever. So I think that the kind of assessment that a master blacksmith would give to an apprentice blacksmith is the right way to do it. I think that's it. It's very real time. Uh, it's project based. You can imagine the apprentice and the master working together on a project, whatever it be, from shoeing a horse to swords to kill goblins or whatever. It you could see the master and the apprentice working together as a team, and you see them. The one is honing their skills, and while the other one is learning, and is practicing. And I think that's where the key is that it's the best assessment comes in my opinion, it comes in the form of real time feedback about some actual project. That's the best assessment to me. And the best you can get, period, is to actually be doing something together with somebody. So like the whole pod one, master idea, whether it's in martial arts or it's a blacksmith, you're literally both working on the same project and you're both committed to doing it. Now, not everybody's going to be able to do that. So that's like a perfect world, right? A perfect learning world would be somebody who knows how to do the thing, who's literally employed doing whatever that thing is. Maybe not, but they've been doing it their whole life. And they are available to literally do the thing with you and to guide you, like a tennis lesson, right? And help you raise your elbow, or whatever you have to do to make those tiny minor micro adjustments, so that the assessment is ongoing and constant. And that is the real key. So the best true assessment is ongoing and constant. Now, that I think this is one of the areas where I think AI is really, really going to help us because, if you're learning a language, for example, right? When you're learning, one of the reasons it's so important to go into another country, or to immerse yourself in the culture of that language, be around that culture and that language all the time, and frankly, be around people who are very forgiving. This is going to sound weird, but if you're trying to learn a foreign language, which is I'll do a separate video on that. One of the best things you can do is get to be friends with young people, people who are not going to judge you, people who are going to laugh and snicker at your ability. No, that's not how you say it. It's like this, right? Because when you're in that group and learning how to speak a foreign language, it's the same way whether you're a child or you're an adult. You're getting constant real-time feedback about how you're performing, and when you fail, and you will, obviously, you're going to fail a lot. You get these micro failures and you make these micro corrections. And that is how the best learning happens, in my opinion. It's the real time feedback, it's the ongoing immersion in what it is you're learning. And it's having that person looking over your shoulder or speaking to you, right? And they'll correct you. Sometimes they'll do it nicely. Sometimes they'll do it not so nicely. So that is the best way for assessment. That's the best way for you to determine your aptitude. And so how do you take the best form of assessment and apply that to deciding whether computer science is for you, for example? How could you assess whether you have what it takes to be a computer technologist? And that's kind of the follow-up question to this is, how do you know? And I told a story in that other video, a very sad story about a boy that I had been working with for 2 years, and in a very real, capacity, watching him make micro changes and stuff. And he, eventually I had to let him go because it was starting to kind of wear on his soul. And I told that story elsewhere, but why that time? Why was that the day? Why was that one day the day that finally the assessment was, it's probably time for me to talk to your parents and have them decide if you need to stay here or you need to go? I didn't say that to him. And it's a very fair question. And I really don't have a direct answer to it. I think it was more of a feel. I was like, it just felt like the right time because it may have been triggered by one moment of particular frustration he was having. And, I was like, it was just like one too many. Right. And I was like, okay, he's really frustrated. It wasn't that he sat down and had to take a test and decide how good he was. Right. And could I have, I replay this entire failure in my mind all the time. Is there something I could have done up front to, weed out somebody who doesn't have an aptitude for computer science or game development or something? Could I have discovered that much earlier? Is there some way I could have known even before we got his hopes up and he got engaged into this whole thing so that, and I don't have the answer to that. I honestly don't. I don't have the answer to that. I know that many countries have tried to put gatekeeper assessments that don't even let you into certain professions. You can't even get into certain schools to educate yourself or certain professions in certain countries unless you pass a certain assessment. And in most of that case, it's usually a test. You can't even progress in your education. And in those countries, if you don't have a credential from one of these institutions, you can't do the job. And there's a separate video about why certify and whether a credential is required or not. If you're a doctor, the answer is yes. If you're, a CEO, the answer, strangely, is no. So, how do we deal with all the ambiguities and touchy-feely, assessment stuff? Well, society has decided to clamp down on this and say, you have to pass this test or you can't go on, period. You're not a good test taker, we don't care. You either know the stuff or you don't. And a lot of times the people that pass the test don't know the stuff. They just know how to pass the test. And I don't believe that that is the true form of assessment. I want to see that kind of assessment die in the world. I hate it. I think it is a horrible idea. And I think people should generally avoid test-based assessment, but you can't. There's so many ways that you have to have this. So certificates are a part of that. But more importantly, how do you know? Oh gosh, that's that really scared me. That legitimately scared me. So there are going to be. You could say that gatekeeping doesn't allow for discovery. Where if you start something and you find out you enjoy it, you'll put far more effort into it. I agree with that 100%. And so I think I mean, this is a long video, but this is one of the more important videos. How do you assess yourself, and how do you know when you've assessed yourself enough to make a definitive decision about whether you want to do something or not? And honestly, as I said before, the answer is it's very personal, and every single person is going to be different. Um, and I don't have a better answer for you than that. I really don't. I wish I could. This is a very personal decision, deciding to go into technology. Um, but just like anything in life, there is a certain level at which, I mean, how many times did you change your major, right? In college, it was like, have I really sampled this career option and this path enough? I mean, I changed my major from CS computer science to Russian, but and actually I changed it from computer science to French, and then from French to Russian, right? And I broke Chantal Thompson, the director of the French department's heart when I told her I was changing my major over to Russian. I mean, she gave me the most French look ever once I told her that. But it's actually kind of the same dilemma, right? Um, had I given French enough, time to know whether I wanted to go into it? It wasn't that I was bad at it. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to be a part of the wall coming down, and getting to know Russians and everything. And so I changed my major to Russian. So there are a lot of, I mean, that was more of an interest issue than an aptitude issue. But I can see people having aptitude questions as well, right? So, here's a good one. Here's a good one. You'll love this one. Okay. We have an ad. I'm so sorry. But this is a really good one. Okay. So I thought I wanted to be a physicist. Yeah, you'll like this story. Rob failing miserably. So I thought I had done reports on black holes since I was 6 years old. I thought physics was the coolest thing ever. I took all the math that I needed to. I mean, seriously, from the time I was in the fifth grade, I was obsessed with black holes and with physics and all of it. And I thought that I wanted to be a physicist. In fact, I used to tell everybody I want to be a physicist one day. Turns out I don't have the chops to be a physicist. So this is a story about how I figured that out. And hopefully you can take something away from this to help you decide whether you've spent enough time self-assessing in computer science or technology or something to decide you don't want to do it. So, or you can't do it in this case. I remember sitting in Physics 101, which very clearly is designed to destroy your soul. I don't, this is one of the things about academic, like formal academia that I really hate. Formal academia will destroy your soul. They will deliberately put in these gatekeeping weed out sessions. And they will have it. And that's what Physics 101 is. And so Physics 101, there's an immense amount of work, and it's like story problems on steroids. It's like really, really hard to do. And, I had a really hard time with that. I did. I had a really hard time with it. I couldn't do it. And I took physics in high school as well. I took AP physics in high school, and I struggled so hard. It's one of the few times when I literally found myself in tears because I couldn't get it. No matter how much I thought I could figure it out, I couldn't get it. And I remember that was one of the few times my dad came down and actually helped me with homework. Because I was really messed up about it, because it was kind of like my dream was kind of fading away from me. I was not going to be able to be a physicist, and I couldn't, do these basic physics problems. Even though my AP physics teacher was, salt of the earth guy, he was an amazing human being. He was also our counselor for the, executive council, and recommended me to go to this leadership camp and all kinds of stuff. I mean, but the point is I sucked at physics. I couldn't do it. I didn't have what it took to, I suppose, visualize these story problems, which, is pretty much physics. These days you put your ChatGPT, yeah. And so anyway, I still tried it. So I took Physics 101, my first year of college, and it crushed me, man. It crushed my soul. I didn't fail, but I knew that I was just not going to be able to get it. I couldn't visualize things. I was too stuck in the practice. It turned out later, I discovered much later, that had I survived that and gone into practical physics. So physics, as you guys know, there's theoretical physics and then there's practical physics. Practical physics physicists are the people blowing stuff up and recording what happens, and they spend most of their days with hard hats on doing crazy experiments. And I was like, damn, I wish someone had told me that. If you want a really good video on physics, watch Particle Fever. It's really amazing. And it really goes into this whole thing. And then you have the theoretical physicists who have to set up all the models, and they spend the entire time in front of a chalkboard trying to, with ungodly amounts of math skill. And they live in their heads. They don't, but they need each other. And had I known that the practical physicist was a thing, I probably would have kept going with it had I survived that class. But it was in that class that I realized two things, and one of them is very inappropriate, and one of them is kind of on the point. The valuable, relevant thing was I couldn't do it. I just didn't have the knowledge, and it wasn't going to happen. And the other thing I realized was, at least in this university, all the cute girls were in the French department. Give me a break. I was 20. I was like 19. And I was unmarried. That is such a horrible thing to say. That is such a horrible thing to say. I went to a Mormon university. Okay? I went to a Mormon university. This probably says more about if it was a... Okay. It probably... Dude, okay, this is one of the times where, my hormones led me to make life decisions. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. I felt guided by the spirit, as like to change my major to a humanities major. And it was largely because I opened the door. I opened the door to the humanities building, and I walked in the humanities building, and I was like, what is happening here? And I was like, it was like wall-to-wall babes, wall-to-wall, college babes. I know I'm a shallow human being. I am so sorry. I was 20, okay? I was 19 or 20 or something. Also Mormon, also, a virgin, celibate, and all that jazz. So, yeah, I was guided to make, it's like, God, I think I should major in French. That's exactly what happened. Confessions with Artifacts Rob. I had done physics, and then I went to CS1. I went to computer science after that. I lasted one semester in computer science. It was the worst thing ever. I hated it. It was not teaching me how to code or make games or anything. It wasn't doing anything important in the world. It was just sitting in front of computers with a bunch of boring people listening to the TAs fight about C versus Pascal. And, I hated it. I hated it. In fact, I was like, is this computer science? Because if it is, I don't want to do anything computer. You know what? As luck would have it, in the humanities lab, that's where all that practical applications were being built. They were building software to teach people languages. And so I actually got a really great practical education, and I learned about the internet. I learned about how to administer PCs. And Max actually worked for the department. I learned about sound engineering because I work in the lab there, all because of the humanities. Because the humanities, in order to practice humanities, you have to use all those technologies. How to write in HyperCard and Flash and all that jazz. And Macromedia Director. I know I'm aging myself, and it was great. I mean, I wanted to make things with applications, with computers and stuff. I didn't really want to spend my time, dissecting bubble sorts. Oh my God. If you want to force people out of a technology career, make them learn how to do all the different sorting algorithms the first time they have an exposure to actual computer science. It's horrible. It's like, you don't make the connection about what's possible. And the other thing too is you think, oh, I can't do a bubble sort. I must be horrible. I'm not going to pursue a tech career. No, you can do a tech career. You don't need to know all this stuff. I've talked a lot about all that leak code stuff. And so it was, but yeah, so I went into the humanities building, and the spirit spoke to me and said, you should learn languages, and you should learn how to use computers to help people learn languages. I ended up starting my own company. I started my own flashcard company. I sold flashcards to the bookstore library. I did a whole bunch of stuff I learned a lot of entrepreneurial skills. Um, yeah, you got to know how to quick sort, and and it was great. And so this video is about assessing yourself and knowing what your aptitude is and knowing when to say no to yourself and that's not good. Um, and that's a tough decision. It's a very personal decision. You know, I think a lot of people give up before they give it a true test. And I think it's really scary. This is why this is such a hard topic, right? Because, and this is one of the reasons I think it's so important that you have a mentor. And it doesn't need to be me. It can be somebody from the industry. I really, you know what? That's a great way to conclude this video. I think the answer to the question about whether you've had enough, right? Whether you are good enough, whether you are going to suffer in that career or you're not, is for you to get a mentor who is in the industry. Maybe one or two of them. Not a teacher who's going to give you a test and you're going to fill out the blanks and decide whether you can do it or not. You need to find somebody who is again, you need to target the job you want. We already talked about this. You need to decide the skills you want, the tasks you want to do every day. What do you enjoy doing? Then you need to isolate the jobs that are in that area. You need to target a few companies, and then you need to find one or two people to mentor you who are specifically either in those companies or in that job. And you need to pay them or not, but you need to get the feedback from those people about what it is you're doing. And having that personal relationship, like the blacksmith that I talked about, the best possible way to get real-time assessment. Other than real-time, the next best way is every week, come back to that mentor and say, here's the work I did this week. Can you talk to me about what I did? And they're not going to give you a grade. They're going to say, oh, well, you might consider this here. You might consider this here. And it could be art. It could be shoeing horses. It could be rust, for God's sake. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you're going to make that connection, and the mentor's going to be able to give you real-time feedback. And then when you come in and you say, look, this is feeling really hard to me, mentor. You say, I feel like this is much harder than it should be. Is this normal? And when that chooses to not otherwise, yeah, they kind of are. And so the point is that having the mentor is going to be the person who's got your back, who's going to help you stay encouraged and say, oh no, everybody goes through that. That part is always hard. This part is a thing. You just need to get through that and you'll be fine. Right? Or, I always remember wax on, wax off, right? I hate this. I hate wax on. I always throw this video right now. Go watch the wax on, wax off video. It's one of the best videos ever. Mr. Miyagi and the Daniel relationship there is so classic. And it's a really good example of a mentorship, right? Because Miyagi's like, Mr. Miyagi's like, you wash car, wax on, wax off. He's Japanese, so horrible Japanese accent. And Daniel's like, my arm's sore. I've been washing your cars all day. He goes, no, this end time. He goes, when are you going to teach me to fight? And he's like, I teach you end time. He's like, that's bullshit. And he's like, he turns around. He turns around to him. I would show the video right now, except for I get banned. Make sure you go watch this video. It's so great. Mr. Miyagi turns to Daniel and he says, show me wax on, wax off. And he's like, and he goes, yeah. And he goes, wax on, wax off. He goes, show me Santa Claus. And show me, blah, blah, blah. And so Daniel shows him the things he's been practicing. It's like got to be one of the best scenes in all of history. I swear to God, it's like one of the best clips. Please make sure you go watch it. And then he goes, now, show. And then he starts to attack him. Mr. Miyagi attacks Daniel, and he uses wax on, wax off, and sand the floor and everything to block every attack from Mr. Miyagi. And then Daniel's like, oh, whoa. And then Mr. Miyagi goes, see you tomorrow. It's like, it's so great. I just love it. You know why I love it? Because Miyagi and Daniel don't have anywhere near the same personality. You know what I mean? They're not. They're totally from totally different personality types. But yet Miyagi accepts him as a mentor. They have this mentorship relationship. And yeah, and when he gets frustrated, when he gets really frustrated, when Daniel gets frustrated, Miyagi's like, no, this is a part of it. Let me show you. And he gives him the insight, and then he moves on and he gets past it. He goes home. And it's so funny. The scene of Daniel walking away from the scene, he's like practicing his sand floor. He's like, oh my God, I just learned like 15 new moves, and I thought I was just cleaning cars the whole time. So what does that have to do with anything? That relationship is really the only way I think that you're going to be able to make a solid, confident decision about where you want to go. If you don't have yeah, hello world. If you don't have that kind of input from a mentor, you will flounder and you will feel lost, and you're like, I don't know if I'm good enough, you know. And having the mentor at first is a way for you to help assess yourself. Now, the last thing I'm going to say in this video is that's not enough. While I do think it's good to have a mentor your whole life, I think it's more important that you learn over time to self-assess. And I think that comes with age, honestly, or time and experience. But over time, you'll start to feel when it's time for you to give up. And you won't need a second party or somebody. You'll always need peer review in a tech world. But you're going to get a good sense of what you're good at and what your superpowers are, and when you're just struggling and when it's really time to give it up, right? And I think you're going to get a better sense of that over time. But at first, I think having a mentor, and even the most experienced veterans still will run something by. And I do this all the time. One of the reasons I stream, one of the reasons I live stream is because some of the things that I'm doing, I'm pushing my own boundaries. And there are people in my stream who are much more experienced than I am, who have done amazing things, and they'll come in and they'll chime in and they'll help me out, sometimes in a nice way, sometimes in a horrible way. But I'm able to get that sort of reflection and get that assessment and get the peer review, which is not as fun as having a dedicated mentor in private to talk to you about your personal projects. That's always best if you can do that. But if you can't do that, join a Discord group and put your stuff out there, and have other people comment on it and stuff. There are people that will do that. So hopefully that's a lot. But this is worth the time. This particular topic is worth the time. So when do you know whether you have an aptitude for something and you should go for it?